The line must be held at all costs. Stay alert, the enemy is near.
Welcome to Going Cardboard episode 3. I've been a little remiss in keeping up with this. I had hoped to do an episode in January, but work and other things kind of interfered with that. So let's see if we can't do episode 3 here in February time frame and see if I can get on track to continue doing this. So one of the big things that I wanted to bring up in this episode was some of the changes to the blog. Refresh the image, I refreshed the logo after 15 years of kind of the same exact thing, which I'm sure had begun to either be iconic or stale. I decided I needed to kind of refresh that. So I turned to AI to make that happen because I have zero artistic abilities whatsoever. And again, these AI tools are amazing. Um, and so I'm pretty excited about what I'll be able to do with those going forward. Uh, this episode 3 will be my first attempt to kind of edit, cut in some things into the video to make it a little bit more eye popping and more interesting. We'll see if I can continue that as the episodes go on through this year. And this is really experimental for me to see if this adds or detracts. Not a whole lot of people are watching these. I think 37 views maybe. So to those of you who do watch and give your time up to hear me blather on, I appreciate it very much. You guys are a big support to the Grumble Jones blog, to the AARs, to the scenarios, to everything that I have attempted to do and add to the community. Uh, AI increasingly is in our our blogosphere. It's increasingly in our worlds. It's in my work world. I have found it extremely useful in creating things for work. I have found it extremely useful for advanced squad leader. It's amazing the detail and the depth when I give an idea to the AI, how it can bring things to the forefront that are very, very uh, accurate to ASL. It has a deep understanding of the rules. It will actually introduce SSRs to scenarios. You have to kind of be very specific, otherwise you're going to get a generic kind of a thing. But its knowledge of the boards, what boards it recommends, it's a nice place to use a sounding board. I'm not going to suggest that AI should be your go-to and you just say, hey, make a scenario, and then you publish that. I have done a couple now through AI and definitely edited them. The OOBs that it comes up with are sometimes not really appropriate for the size of the scenario. In some cases, it's very few squads, almost too few to even have a credible scenario. So it doesn't get everything right. I've noticed that in a variety of areas. Even trying to edit my blog and whatnot to get a new image and a new logo, there was some issues with that, and I tried to get some animated logos. The ASL Academy guys have a really great one. Neil Olin has that very great coffee drinking guy, and every now and then in the video he will take a drink from his cup of coffee. I think that's awesome. I'm looking to other content creators because they do such a great job. The ASL Academy, Illuminating Rounds, and George Hollis, his awesome site. And I obviously want to learn and do better at this. So the blog has been revitalized, I think, in a positive way. Again, I've said for years I don't want it to get stale. I think that's always a fear you have with anything you've created, that it's going to eventually time itself out. It's just not going to be interesting anymore. I have cut back considerably on AARs, mainly because I'm playing 4 times a weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I just have very little time to blog. So going forward, as I have said previously, I will do an AAR probably one a month, and it will cover the 4 scenarios of a specific weekend. Um, and that's kind of moved me into last 2 weekends, which have been miserable ASL for me personally. I have lost 10 games in a row. I am at an epic losing streak at the moment. Um, and some of that is related to the side that you roll. Unfortunately, Dan and I, we randomize what side we're going to take. Typically, we roll for who will be the attacker on Thursday night. And then whoever attacks Thursday night, Friday scenario, they're the defender. The Saturday scenario, they're the attacker. Sunday scenario, they're the defender. And it just so happened that luck of the draw put me in 4 consecutive scenarios in which I was kind of the underdog. In 2 of those scenarios, I had uh, the side I had taken has never won. There's no recorded victories in a roar, and I didn't change that reality in those games. A couple of others I probably should have won, um, but I had issues with mouthed weapons. Just to be honest. Uh, First shot in one of our scenarios, it was a Russian front scenario. I had a KV1 roll in front of my um, 37L. I got the APCR. Uh, so I'm going to roll for APCR. And on that roll, I mouthed the gun. I had a perfect shot. It was a side to rear shot. I think it might have actually ended up being a rear shot on this KV1. And once that gun was gone, I had no armor. And it's early war, so the Germans really have no, other than street fighting, they have no other chance. I was on starter kit boards, and starter kit boards, um, there's some really strange lines of sight. There are some cases where street fighting isn't even applicable, even though you're in a building. There's this extra open ground hex between you and the road, the other building that's across the street. So I was not able to street fight in some of these cases. And of course, you got a patsy to get there, so you may or may not have that opportunity. This was a um, rally point 2, which you can play as starter kit or you can play as full ASL, which we played as full ASL on starter kit boards. Um, I'm not a huge fan of starter kit boards. They have odd lines of sight, things that you think would normally be blocked are wide open. No walls, no hedges. Really change the complexity of the game and make for an environment. It's tough uh, to assault fortified positions. You know, Dan and I both rely on walls. If you're in a building and there's a wall and you haven't claimed wall advantage, I'm going to assault move every time adjacent to the wall, take the wall advantage, and that's something you have to consider in ASL. Of course, in starter kit, it's not applicable. So at any rate, it had been that kind of a period for me. I was rolling badly. I always have a tendency to roll badly. Um, I've tried different dice towers. I've tried different dice cups. I don't get anywhere. Dan has been really lately on a nice hot streak with his dice. Um, his dice glass is, I think, the culprit. It's not really his dice. We both use Battle School Precision dice, but he gets very good results from his dice, and he has a tendency to get rate of fire. I rarely get rate of fire, and when I do, it's normally a mortar that shoots endlessly, hit, no effect, hit, no effect, hit, no effect, to the point that you just wish it would break, and most of the time it does. Um, the other thing that Dan has a tendency to do and went for a very long streak was rolling snakes on a morale check and generating a hero. And heroes, good lord, they can undo a scenario very easily, very quickly. Because once Dan has that hero, he will combine with fire groups, and once a hero is combined with a fire group, the entire fire group gets the -1. Uh, Different from a hero even, or from an officer. So I have a healthy respect and fear of heroes, particularly from Dan when he's got them. And the other thing he'll use them, eh, it's a freebie, so they're going to come charging in, and you're going to take shots at this guy because you almost have to. He's going to have a factor and down one, and they become bullet magnets. And I've had defenses completely undone because I could not stop the hero. And conversely, when I have my heroes, they go running towards, and Dan rolls snakes and shoots them to, KIAs them. So Dan and I are not the same in this game in many cases. Um, the rate of fire conundrum for me is one that I have been bothered about personally for a long time. I have a heavy machine gun. I have a 37L AT gun. Designer is the scenario is built on you getting rate of fire. I don't get rate of fire. I just don't get it. Dan gets rate of fire, remains concealed for the majority of his shots. Um, that's a tough defense to crack when your opponent is keeping rate and getting hits. Um, it alters the game. Um, and defensive fire is the single most important phase for all players. If you cannot defend yourself, you're doomed. This leads me to another aspect of Dan's game that I both respect and fear: advancing fire. Uh, Dan is a uber aggressive player. I have never played anybody as aggressive as Dan, and in many cases, that aggressiveness can get him in trouble. When he's moving across open ground, and if I am rolling average dice, I have a pretty good chance of stopping that attack. But in many cases, I don't roll average dice. One of the great examples that I like to pull out and to highlight what can happen when your dice are just stone cold. So I have a 4.68 with a light machine gun. Dan sends two 4.36 Russian conscripts in an attack against me, just moving right in the open. They're going to move adjacent in different hexes. I roll the dice. I'm going to shoot at longer range, uh, and I was going to basically spray fire in two hexes. So when the first one got adjacent to me, I'm going to shoot. I'm going to have basically a 14 factor shot -2. I roll a 10 and I cower. Okay, so I'm final fired. I roll a 10. It goes down to a 6 -2 is an 8 under 6, which is a check. Dan's 4.36 passes, doesn't pin. You've left 2 resid down in that hex. Another squad comes adjacent to me. I'm not going to final protective fire because I'm already, well, let's say in this case, I actually did protective fire and I roll an 8. Okay. Um, now I'm pinned, right? Because I have to take them around check and I didn't do anything. So now I've got 2 4.36s. I'm pinned. They come into close combat with me. I have failed to stop these guys moving in the open. Should have mowed them both down, and I did not. They're 2-1 in close combat. Now, of course, they're conscripts, so they're pluses. Neither one of us gets ambush, and in that roll, I'm pinned, so I'm attacking at 1-2. I don't kill him. He's 2-1. He kills me, and now he has a light machine gun to pick up in the next phase. And this is not an uncommon thing in ASL. This can happen, and we would realistically say, well, let's say that 4.68 is Grossdeutschland, or it's some other elite German formation, Panzerlehr, the 116th. These grenadiers know their business, right? And 2 conscript Russian squads coming at them through the open. We should all be able to predict that result. But ASL is a game of dice. A random dice roll is going to determine the efficacy of your defense or your attack. And I always credit Dan because he tests you, he tests you, he tests you, he tests you. He's going to come at you so hard, and again, in many cases, he's going to pay a healthy price for that, but not always. And it's those rare occasions where that crazy attack works, and as in this instance. And the instance I just gave is a real one. That did occur to me in a game. I can't remember what the scenario was, but it was quite some time ago. So it's been kind of that situation for me for the last 10 games that we've played. I have just been off in some sort of die roll funk. I'm not rolling well, consistently not rolling well. Um, an area that's always plagued me, and I did some research on this years and years ago with a buddy in St. Louis when we did a dice roll log. When I have 16 factors, I rarely roll less than a 9 on an IFT attempt. And it's not an imagined phenomenon. It is an occurrence that happens with maddening frequency. And it happens so often that I know, and we use the IIFT, and I've already memorized what happens when I have a 16 factor shot. I know how a 9 and 10 because I usually get a 9 or a 10. And in a couple of these games, I had a single German squad I was trying to reduce with Americans in one of our scenarios, and I'm shooting 21 plus factor shots. They're in a stone building, so it's +3, and I continually did nothing. Can't charge this guy. It's a German 5.48 with a light machine gun. I, Dan's not going to muff that roll. He's gonna mow me down. And in that particular situation, I actually did generate a hero, and I sent a hero to try and get adjacent to that guy. And yes, he rolled a 3 - 2. KIA the hero. Easy come, easy go. And that's how the game should reflect. I mean, you're charging a German machine gun, with a 5.48 Fallschirmjägers in a house. Yeah, he should take you out. Um, so anyway, it's been frustrating. My personal ELR is in the toilet. I won't lie. Dan and I have both gone through win loss episodes where we've had very long streaks, win streaks, and losing streaks, but typically not more than 6. And we're able to kind of correct, and then pendulum swings the other way. I have set the record now between the two of us with a 10 in a row. And I'm concerned as next game Thursday night is going to possibly put me at 11. Um, we picked 4 rally point scenarios. It was my turn to pick. So next, starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're playing 4 rally point scenarios, and rally point 15, 16, and 17. 2 of them are Korean scenarios. One is Japanese, Chinese, and the last one is Viking Rescue, which is Camp Group Millenkamp, relieving I think the 560 penal battalion guys that were surrounded. In that excellent RZM book, Camp Group Millenkamp really gives great detail on that action. So I'm excited to play that one. I've always been interested in that particular action. I enjoy Poland 1944. I love those scenarios. Some of my very favorite. So I'm excited for the weekend. Dan and I, when we switch off, right? So he picks one week, I pick one week. I wanted to try a different way of assigning which side we had. So I said, look, I'm going to do the balance on all 4 of these scenarios. 3 of them were balanced. One was pro-American, and one of the North Korean ones. Now it was pro-American in Roar, but it was pro-North Korean in the ASL archive. And sometimes I will take the ASL archive almost a little more seriously. I know that may be heretical to some folks, but typically they are, what do I want to say, more recent playings of the scenario. Roar is a little bit more historical. Um, so sometimes so in this particular case, I think the Americans may have the edge. I will be the Americans in that particular scenario, so we'll see. Um, but what I decided is I said, hey, let's take the 4 scenarios. You tell me what scenario and what side you want to be. And so Dan picked in his, and he picked to be the Russians in Viking Rescue because he loves to play the Russians. He plays the Russians, I think, better than anyone I know. I was very happy to be the Viking division in that one. I prefer to be Germans whenever I can. And then I picked the Chinese in the Japanese Chinese scenario set in 37. It's an urban fight. I really wanted to play the Chinese. I don't enjoy the Japanese very much. And then the other 2 scenarios, we looked at it and then we rolled to see who would be the attacker. High rolls the attacker. And I'm excited to see what the results are. If we split the wins, which is typically what we want to do in a scenario, we want to split the win. I'd like to get 2. I'd like to see Dan get 2. Getting shut out, as I have the past 2 weekends, is hard. It affects Obviously, it affects your ego, but re- it reduces my confidence in my ability to play this game. I sit there thinking, do I not know how to play this game? Can I not make things happen? And the dice are out of your control. Um, I talk a bit about it in the next AAR that's going to come out next Monday. I talk about this a little bit, and I always use sports metaphors, right? So if I'm playing tennis against somebody and he keeps hitting aces and I can't return them, I'm going to lose. And it's not much of a game. Or if I do return the ball, I hit it into the net. I mouthed my gun. And in basketball, ASL is a game of momentum, right? And in a basketball game, if your opponent is coming down court and keeps dropping threes, and you go in and you can't even get your layups, you're bouncing off the boards, or you're just missing easy shots, you're not going to win the game. You're not putting up the points. You're not keeping pace. You're not staying with your opponent, and that can that can lead to personal ELR collapse. You give up in a game, or you become fatalistic in a game. It's like, I'll just throw those guys across the street. What difference does it make? I've already lost the game, and that mindset takes hold on you. And I conceded a lot of games in the last 10, a couple of which, had I maybe just bared down more, he may have the pendulum may have swung to my side. I wasn't convinced that was going to be the case. Um, Dan and I usually will play an hour and a half to 2 hours, and if it's clear that the 15 run rule is in effect, right, like t-ball, I've lost this game. There's no point in keeping it going. I like to respect both of our time and say, yeah, I'm gonna give the concession. Um, and I've even done that in tournaments. My one time playing Wes Vaughn, who's arguably one of the best players in the nation. Um, I had made a mistake that was made at Haslock a couple of years. I had placed an aircraft gun in a building. It was a 45 scenario, Germans and Russians, and I was the Germans, and I knew a certain size couldn't go in buildings. I knew that. And Wes had gone to eat, and I had the gun somewhere else in an appropriate location. And Dan and some buddies came over, and they're all trying to give me advice because they know I'm nervous about playing Wes. I'd never played Wes before. I'd never made it to the third round in a tournament like that. And they said, "Hey, you need to put that in that building." And I'm like, I don't think I can put that in the building. And they said, "Oh yeah, you can put that in the building." I couldn't put it in the building, and I listened to them because I was nervous, and I was trying to make sure that I did as much things right as I could. And in the process, I did the wrong thing. When I went to fire that gun, Wes like, "Well, you can't have it in the building." And I'm like, "Oh man!" Of course, removed from play, right? That's the sportsman-like thing to do. Hey, yep, I messed up. It's gone. So I lost a huge asset. And I'm playing one of the best players in the world, and I am not a great player. I'm a C-level player. Just managed to get lucky, and here I am, facing against a guy that's going to ultimately win the tournament. And all I wanted to do was give a credible game, not embarrass myself. Of course, I was immediately embarrassed because I had that silly mistake. And it that communicates to your opponent like, yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And we had a good game, but again, it came down to dice, and that's the thing that I see with great players is they get their rolls. They get the rolls when they need to get a hit. They get a hit. And so in that game, I was just trying to survive. I was west across the river with all these Russians. He had American tanks. He's smoking the literal hell out of me. And a word to the wise: don't pick a scenario that gives your opponent American tanks with smoke. Avoid that if you can. Smoke mortars. I was given a class, a graduate level class in how to use smoke effectively. And smoke in ASL is a real nightmare. You know, it's +3. For God's sakes, a stone building is +3. Why smoke is +3 is anybody's guess. And it's worse if you're in the smoke, of course. Now you're +4 to shoot out of it. So smoke can really undo the defense pretty effectively, and we see that. So at any rate, what led me to the concession? I think we're at turn 3. I got a panther. I had a king tiger that was trying desperately to avoid getting killed because he had tanks as well as these American Shermans. And I've got a famous SS Panzer officer in this tank, Langanka or someone of that nature. It says a -2 liter. I drive up. There's an SU 122, whatever it was, over here, and I was going to get into a hold down position behind a wall so I would have a shot at this thing. That is a difficult shot. I used only two movement in Wes's line of sight. Right, moved into the hex, stopped for two, I'm hull down. It's a tough shot. He's buttoned up, shoots, hits, killed, game over. Because he was in my backfield. The Panther was the only thing that was going to hold that flank. I was collapsing. King Tiger was, it's lumbering around. It's going to eventually get a hit in the rear against these Shermans that were coming around. So I just looked at Wes and said, "Man, that's it. That's game. Good game. You win." And gave the concession. And it's frustrating. I will say that my observation of great players is obviously they know the rules and they know the tactics. And initially in our game, Wes was not rolling well. He wasn't getting smoke. He was rolling 11s. But after that initial turn one, his dice were popping. He was right on. And when your opponent is getting results and making you roll the dice, it's just like tennis, right? Key aspect of that game is hit the ball over the net. As long as you hit the ball over the net, you're going to be in a good position. If you can't hit the ball over the net, you're not gonna have an effective or fun game. So at any rate, I'm going to keep this a little short this time. Again, I wanted to reach out again, put another episode out there, uh, talk about things that are interesting to me. And at any rate, got a 10 o'clock meeting I have to go to. So I will catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks and roll low.